as we welcome in the Jewish year 5783. I want to take you back for a moment to 5729, otherwise known as 1968. That year, our country was on fire with anti-war protests, and MLK had just been assassinated. On the other side of the world, the state of Israel was taking in the changes who they would be 1 year after their victory in the Six-Day War. I still have a Life magazine from that period on display in my family room, with a famous cover of an Israeli soldier cooling off in the waters of the Suez Canal. Israel's victory in that conflict 20 years after its creation was for us back then like a modern-day Purim moment. For 6 days earlier, hostile Arab armies surrounded the country, and it seemed to everyone that the Jewish state was about to be destroyed. But barely a week later, there was that Israeli soldier swimming freely in that Egyptian body of water. 1 year later, her victory did not just transform Israel, but also began to transform the conception of who we are as Jews, both in the popular perception and in our self-image. It was a watershed moment in the movement we call Zionism, as we as a people united around its call to support Jewish nationalism and peoplehood. Now, 53 years later, we worry that such unity built around our embrace of Zionism is a thing of the past, as our young people feel alienated from an Israel they perceive as being a bully in the region. As efforts to challenge Israel's legitimacy gain currency on both sides of the political spectrum in this country, as the religious extreme in Israel becomes more endemic, as the tikvah, or hope for a two-state solution as a means to bring peace, fades for some, and as some Israelis themselves wonder if they still need diaspora, American Jewish support. Perhaps some of us consider that Zionism, as an essential expression of our people, has run its course. Now, it would be easy for you to put the blame for the rising embrace of such a perspective on political extremes or on anti-Semitism, but we know that both entropy and apathy are such powerful forces in the human condition. As we prepare this year to celebrate Israel's 75th birthday, it's not hard for us to take the successes of Zionism now for granted, nor tire of the seeming intractability of the conflict, and want to turn our attention to other areas of Jewish life. You know that in some communities, rabbis are even afraid to engage the topic of Zionism. But it's my belief that today, Zionism is more important than ever as one of the organizing principles of our people. We have never in history ever been just the Jewish religion. And Zionism, in whatever form, has always been essential to our renewal as a people and a community, touching on so many aspects of our particularity. Ahad Ha'am, that great founder of cultural Zionism, who died in 1927, never was able to see the actual state, he rightly envisioned that the state and the diaspora would coexist in a dynamic of support, one for the other. Did you know that today nearly every North American cantor and rabbi has studied in Israel, including all of my colleagues on this bima? Birthright, teen trips. How many of you have been on Birthright? Look at that. Have increased Jewish identification among our children. Our ketubot, our ritual objects, our books, even some of your favorite television shows are the result of Israeli creativity. But like any ism, there is always a risk that it can become static when it was meant to be dynamic. A healthy Zionism requires our engaging it, wrestling with it, and considering how in a new day it can still bring meaning to Jewish life. So to think about that, let us acknowledge that we are in a new time. There is no fear of being cast into the sea as Israel's existence has become more secure. As Rabbi Beth said last night, North American Jewry is nearly equal in size to the Jewish state's population of Jews, and we are growing and redefining how to identify being Jewish. Despite our successes, the project of Zionism is not yet complete. For we know having a state was never enough. Our people's longing for Zion has always included the embrace of a messianic ideal, that its realization is not so we can be a nation like any other, nor to serve just as a place of refuge for desperate Jews, as important as that is. We've always believed, it's taught in our Torah, the state must be an or l'goyim, a light unto the nations, an example of justice and mercy and walking humbly with our God, living as national exemplars of how to honor the stranger, care for the environment, seek peace, and pursue it. These words are all mentioned in the prophetic visions best expressed by people like Amos and Micah, that we in every Jewish generation have worked so hard to make real. And we know that sadly, we're not yet there. And so we still need a vital, meaningful Zionism today, because we still need to fulfill that prophetic vision, not just for us, but for the world. So to do so, let's step back for a moment and think about how do we relate to each other as a Jewish people as we seek renewal. One place to start is to not underestimate what your partner does for you. I hate to admit it, but back in 1968, I was 8 years old. And I remember being in Miss Johnson's 4th grade class. I was one of the only Jews in the entire school back in the great metropolis of the Inland Empire, Upland, California. Not exactly the center of the Jewish world. Miss Johnson was from Wyoming, and dressed in her cowboy boots, she looked the part. One day, when another kid asked her, "What kind of plant is that you have on your desk?" her response threw me. "Oh," she said to the whole class, "it's a wandering Jew." There I was, the only Jew there. A second-generation American Jew looking at a plant that gets its name. Later, I looked up and found out from its inclination to seek wet, moist regions in which to grow, implying a kind of opportunism and rootlessness. As I grew up and remembered that story, I wondered, was this how people perceive me? Am I still a wandering Jew? Is our sense of being settled here all an illusion? In the 50-plus years, 54 years since I saw that plant. Despite the rise of the new anti-Semitism with neo-Nazis raising their ugly heads, even here in America, we know that the perception of the Jew as wanderer has been set aside. The success of Zionism, a radical experiment in our own identity, has changed how we see ourselves. Zionism puts the wanderer out of the Jew. It's transformed our image from being a suffering minority to that of a participant in determining the direction of the world and our own destiny. Israel's now the startup nation, and her reality, even with anti-Semitic challenges of today, has increased Jewish confidence worldwide in this country and in this city. But if Israel is to engender a continued love of Zion amongst our population, she too must not take us for granted. I think it was just 3 years ago that the Israeli ambassador to the United States, Ron Dermer, who spoke from this bima, uttered the words that Israel does not need North American Jewry. Not a great diplomat. We may too easily, though, respond that Israel needs us because of our political and our financial support. But understand, Israel also needs our understanding of Zionism, too. She needs us to fervently promote a Zionism that challenges the first Prime Minister Ben-Gurion's notion that Israel will be successful when the Jewish state is just like any other. No. The North American Jewish community demands that Israel reflect the values we've been teaching all these years of tikkun olam, of speaking peace with the Palestinians and pursuing it, of celebrating Jewish diversity and seeing the holy in all people, whatever their gender, whatever their sexual preference. That we want to put that kind of Jewish back into the Jewish state is an essential part of our ongoing contribution to the purpose of Zionism. It would be so damaging to the soul of Israel and the soul of the Jewish people if we threw up our hands and stopped engaging. For we are a voice that maintains the prophetic vision that Israel can exemplify to the world that one must make peace with one's enemies, that one must be a tiller of the garden called earth, that one can reach higher as we embrace our common humanity. I deeply believe diaspora and Israeli Jewry so need and still are so beneficial to each other. I recently received a letter from one of my heroes, Anat Hoffman. Have you guys heard of Anat Hoffman before? She's the executive director of the Reform Movement's Israel Religious Action Center and leads Women at the Wall so bravely. She works tirelessly as a modern-day prophet. You want to see a modern-day prophet? Go online and watch Women on the Wall and Rosh Chodesh and see what she does to help make Israel a center of equality and of justice for all. In her letter to me, she used another plant metaphor to help me think about how we can go forward with Zionism, a Zionism that speaks to us today, as every generation has. She wrote, Jonathan, I learned about grafting almonds from a book on horticultural techniques. And I think, where are you going with this? And she said, it turns out that one should graft a shoot of sweet almonds on a rootstock of bitter almonds. The bitter almond's more resilient, the sweet almond is more fragile. And it turns out that if you don't cultivate the tree regularly, the bitter will overcome the sweet. For successful grafting to take place, you have to focus on the joint between the true trees. Focus on that joint. I'm no rabbi, she concluded, but I think I have a sermon here. I agreed. Both Israel and diaspora Jewry together need to keep cultivating and grafting the next healthy stocks on the next generation of healthy stocks on this tree Zionism. It's a joint project that strengthens all of us. So what should we cultivate? What should we graft? I believe first, let us cultivate a Zionism that promotes Jewish statehood, but that rejects the nihilistic messianism that believes that Israel possesses as a God-given right all the land with no need for compromise. We should welcome Prime Minister Lapid's recent statement at the UN, embracing out loud the two-state solution. But let us also cultivate a Zionism that challenges those who maintain that we Jews should be one of the only peoples in the world to have our right to live in a nation state questioned. Clearly, we're not in a post-national age, as once was taught from this bima by another rabbi. We're not. So let's be pragmatic, with eyes wide open as we work as partners trying to heal what's injured in the plant, like standing up against the acts of extremism in the settler community with their behavior that we know is antithetical to Jewish values. Lovers of Israel can work from the outside, calling out what's wrong, while working together to bring repair and healing. And as we do here in this country, let's not condemn the whole country for the acts of a minority, nor be silent in the face of the new casual anti-Semitism that wants to declare that Israel is an apartheid state, when it is anything but that. Second, let us, as proud Reformed Jews, along with our conservative and even some Orthodox partners, graft on that tree a respect for Jewish diversity in the Jewish homeland. We can protest the Israeli practice of giving only one stream of Judaism a monopoly on Jewish life. Non-Orthodox synagogues, they have to be established. Israelis are thirsty for them without state interference. The right to pray at the wall in an egalitarian setting, which is what Anat's working so hard for, must be called out as a right. It must be sacrosanct in that holy place. And the embrace of patrilineal descent should be recognized in Israeli family law, as it is in the law of return, so that we have equal rights throughout the life cycle, from birth to burial. This is a graft on the plant of Zionism all Israelis must help us make a form of, making the bond stronger. And we have some Israelis here. I want to welcome the new Consul General of Israel, Marco Sermonetta, sitting right there. Wave for you, Marco. We're glad to have you here in our congregation and in San Francisco. Finally, as we stand up against the forces that try to cancel Israel, we can graft on the plant of Zionism renewed pride in our identity. Let us be unafraid to speak up for Israel, whether in the halls of power, on the college campus, or amongst our peers. To have pride, we do need better education and engagement. It's my hope that this great congregation will develop a sister synagogue relationship with a nascent Israeli Reform congregation. We should have done so long ago. It's my hope that we'll annually host an Israeli shaliach here, a teacher on our staff, that our kids will learn from them, and that we'll reestablish the summer teen trip to Israel from Emanu-El. Any of you go on that teen trip a long time ago? It was so impactful. It needs to come back here. And maybe as well work with the Federation to establish for the first time a young adult trip so that our young adults will also go and engender pride in that connection, but also open-eyed see what's wrong so they can honestly be partners in the tikkun that needs to be done. This is a graft that Temple Emanu-El, a great synagogue, needs to add to the tree. It's the 125th anniversary since that first Zionist Congress back in Basel, Switzerland. There Herzl made that famous statement. What do you say, everyone? Im tirtzu, ein zo agada. If you will it, it is no dream. Today, Israel's not a dream, it's a reality. But that tree of Zionism needs tending to in order for the vision that we are taught in that tree of life, the Torah right there, to be fulfilled. That is our holy task. So let us proudly and joyfully keep tending to this vision of making Israel an Or LaGoyim, a true light unto the nations. The world needs such a light. It's a privilege that we live in such a time that we might help to do so. Shana Tova U'Mitokah. Happy New Year, everyone.